At our 10-year anniversary party, my wife stunned everyone by announcing she was leaving me for her high-powered boss, only for her own family to mercilessly shut her down on the spot. And now, 7 months later, karma has dealt her a devastating blow no one saw coming. I'm still in shock as I sit here writing this. 3 days ago, my entire world fell apart, and I'm just trying to make sense of it all by putting it into words. Honestly, it's hard to even type this out. I never imagined I'd be one of those guys airing out their relationship disaster on Reddit. I'm using Mark and Sarah as our names because those are basically the default fake names on here, and I'm a little paranoid someone we know might read this and connect the dots. But then again, the story is so wild that anyone who was there would probably recognize it instantly. I guess I should start by saying that up until 3 days ago, I really believed my marriage was solid. Not perfect, whose is, but stable. We had plans for our future, but I guess all of that just went out the window. For some background, my wife Sarah has always had what you might call a very intense personality. If something doesn't go her way, or if someone pushes back on her ideas, she blows up fast. She talks a mile a minute, raises her voice, sometimes throws things, nothing dangerous, just enough to make a point, and slams doors. It's like a storm rolls in, and you either ride it out or give in. Then she goes silent, and shuts you out until you come around. I put up with this for years. Why? Because I loved her. And over time, I just learned to manage her moods. I figured out ways to keep the peace, and I got used to tiptoeing around things just to avoid the next explosion. I know how that sounds. I really do. But if you've ever been in a situation like this, you know it's not like flipping a switch. It's more like a slow boil. After 10 years together, I had developed all these habits and coping strategies to keep the calm. I could read her moods like a weather forecast, and I'd do whatever I could to prevent the storm. Before I get into what actually happened 3 days ago, I think it helps to share a couple of stories so you get the picture of what I was dealing with for years. About 3 years back, we were planning to renovate parts of our house. Nothing over the top, just updating the kitchen and redoing the master bath. We had saved up for years, and I was excited to finally make the place feel more like our own. Sarah jumped into the project full force, which was fine. She's got a better eye for design than I do. But then she picked a contractor after just one meeting. The guy had apparently charmed her, and she decided he was the one without getting any other quotes. When I looked over his proposal, I noticed a bunch of red flags. First, the price was way over our budget. Second, the timeline he gave was way too fast. Gutting and rebuilding a whole kitchen in 2 weeks? Yeah, right? Anyone who's gone through renovations knows that's a joke. Plus, the materials section was super vague. It just said things like premium countertops and high-quality cabinets, with no mention of brands or models or even what the materials were. I've read enough renovation horror stories on Reddit to know we were heading for a disaster. So I calmly suggested that we get a couple more quotes to compare. I wasn't saying she made a bad choice. I just thought it was smart to look around before committing that much money. You'd have thought I insulted her entire family. She immediately flew off the handle, yelling that I didn't trust her, that I was sabotaging the whole project, and that I was always tearing down her ideas. Then she stormed off and gave me the silent treatment for 2 days. 2 full days of her pretending I didn't exist in our own house, all because I suggested we get more than one quote. Eventually, I got her to agree to it, mostly by casually leaving horror story threads about bad contractors open on my laptop where she could accidentally read them. We did end up getting a second quote, and, shocker, it was way more reasonable. The second contractor also pointed out some major issues with the first guy's plan. Sarah agreed to go with the second company, but she never once admitted she was wrong. She didn't apologize or acknowledge anything, just acted like going with the second guy had been her idea all along. I was just relieved we weren't getting ripped off, so I let it go. I mentally filed it under fights not worth having. Then, there was the vacation fight about 1.5 years ago. We had this tradition of taking turns choosing our annual trip. It was my year to pick, and we talked about doing something outdoorsy, maybe a cabin near a national park with some hiking. I thought we were on the same page. Sarah had always seemed to enjoy our past hiking trips. We'd sit by the fire at night, drinking wine and talking for hours under the stars. Honestly, some of my best memories. I spent months researching options. I had a whole folder of bookmarked cabins, trail guides, even a place that delivered gourmet meal kits, so we wouldn't have to plan meals while we were out there. I was excited, and I've been dropping hints for weeks. Sarah seemed into it. She asked questions, acted interested. Then one day, she comes home waving a travel magazine, and suddenly we're going to some luxury resort in the Caribbean. Private pools, personal butlers, the works. It was easily triple the cost of what we'd agreed to spend. When I brought up the budget and reminded her that it was my turn to plan the trip, she exploded again. She accused me of being cheap and trying to ruin her fun. Said all our friends were going on fancy vacations, which wasn't true, and that I was embarrassing her. She ended up throwing a decorative pillow across the room, breaking a picture frame that had one of our wedding photos in it. Looking back, that moment feels almost symbolic. She said she'd book the trip herself if I was going to suck the joy out of everything, then slammed the bedroom door so hard a painting fell off the wall and ignored me for the rest of the night. I ended up crashing on the couch that night, and when I tried to talk about it the next morning, she acted like nothing even happened. That same day, she went ahead and booked the resort using our joint credit card before I could say a word. I didn't bother fighting it. What was the point? She'd already made up her mind. I knew from experience that pushing back would just lead to days, maybe even weeks, of tension and her usual passive-aggressive digs. So we went to the fancy resort. It was nice, I guess, but I couldn't really enjoy it. Not after what it cost us and how we ended up there in the first place. This same cycle repeated over and over again throughout our marriage. I'd disagree or question something, she'd blow up or shut down, and then just go ahead and do whatever she wanted anyway. Most of the time, I'd just calmly say what I thought, watch her lose it, then give in, because honestly it was easier than dealing with the storm that followed. Our friends used to joke that Sarah wore the pants in our relationship. They'd nudge me and say stuff like, happy wife, happy life, right Mark? And I'd laugh along with them, because what else could I do? Admit I was scared of my own wife's temper? That I'd basically stopped trying to be an equal partner in my own marriage, because the emotional battles just weren't worth it? Looking back, I can see how toxic it all was. But when you're in it, it just becomes normal. You adjust. You adapt. You tell yourself every couple has its issues. I did love her. We had good times. But always walking on eggshells, never knowing when she'd explode, constantly feeling like my voice didn't matter. It wore me down. I didn't even realize how much until everything finally blew up. Now, let me tell you about what happened 3 nights ago. The night that shattered my marriage and killed whatever illusions I still had about who Sarah really was. We were celebrating our 10th anniversary with about 50 people at this really nice event space downtown. Sarah handled most of the planning, which was fine by me. The guest list included our closest friends, a few of my coworkers, and her family, her parents and 2 younger brothers. My own family couldn't make it. My parents retired in Portugal, and my sister lives in Australia. Looking back, that might have been a blessing. They didn't have to witness the mess that unfolded. Up until that moment, everything had been going well. The food was great, the drinks were flowing, everyone was mingling and having fun. During dinner, a few guests gave short toasts, sharing memories and offering congratulations. Sarah seemed happy. She was holding my hand under the table, whispering jokes to me during the speeches. After dinner, I was about to head up to the little stage to give a short speech I prepared, just to thank everyone for coming, say a few nice things about Sarah and the 10 years we'd shared. But before I could get up, Sarah suddenly walked on stage with her boss, David. I didn't even know he was coming. He wasn't on the guest list we talked about. Apparently, he arrived about an hour into the party after Sarah briefly stepped out and came back with him. Her family looked surprised too. I saw her dad give her mom a puzzled look when David walked in. Sarah grabbed the mic, and everyone went quiet. She had this weird smile on her face, not her usual friendly smile, but something smug, almost victorious. She said we were here to celebrate, not just our 10 years together, but a new beginning for her. At first, I thought maybe she was announcing a promotion or something. But then, completely out of the blue, she said she was leaving me. The room fell totally silent. Everyone was just staring, stunned. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I couldn't even process what she'd said. Sarah, and leaving me? That didn't make sense. It felt like the words didn't belong in the same sentence. I kept hoping I'd misheard her, that it was some horrible prank. But she kept going, and it got worse. She pointed to David standing beside her, this guy who's at least 10 years older than us, divorced twice already, and said she was leaving me for him. That he was the one who could finally give her what she wanted, a baby and a real family. And then she dropped the line that gutted me. She said she'd found someone man enough to give her that. Those words hit like a blade. We've been trying to have a baby for years. We hadn't been successful. And just recently, I found out I have fertility issues. It was something deeply personal, something we'd only shared with close family. And now she was throwing it in my face, in front of everyone we knew. Then she said, this is happening now. This is my choice. And I'm moving forward with it. Her voice was so cold, like she was finalizing a contract, not ending a 10-year marriage. I stood there, frozen. It felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I couldn't breathe. My face went hot, then cold. The whole room started spinning. I looked around. Everyone was staring, shocked and awkward, unsure where to look. People who had just congratulated us. My coworkers, who would never forget this. Her family, just as stunned as I was. And there she was, Sarah, standing beside David, smiling like she'd won something. This man had eaten at our table, shaken my hand, all while, apparently, sleeping with my wife. My thoughts were racing. How long had this been going on? How did I not see it? We just had dinner the night before. She kissed me goodbye that morning. How do you go from that to publicly humiliating your husband like this? Before I could even begin to respond, Sarah's dad stood up. He pointed at her and said, your behavior is shameful, Sarah. What you're saying about Mark is cruel and wrong. And doing this in front of everyone, it's unforgivable. Then her mom stood too, adding, we didn't raise you to behave like this. We don't support this at all. But her dad wasn't finished. He looked her straight in the eye and said, because of what you've done tonight, the way you've humiliated your husband and disgraced yourself, we no longer consider you part of this family. We disown you, Sarah. All 4 of them stood up and walked out without even glancing back, even when she called after them. I've known her family for over a decade. They're traditional, yes, but they believe in loyalty, in doing what's right. I've never seen them so united in their disappointment. And I think that's when the full weight of what just happened really hit me. If even her own family, who had always loved and supported her unconditionally, was walking away over this, then whatever she'd done had to be truly unforgivable. Sarah clearly hadn't expected that kind of reaction. She started screaming after them, her voice high-pitched and frantic, but I couldn't make out the words over the blood pounding in my ears. David reached out like he was trying to calm her down, putting a hand on her arm, but she yanked it away violently. In that moment, she looked completely unhinged. Nothing like the confident woman who had just announced she was leaving me for a better man. That was the moment I snapped out of my shock. A strange kind of calm washed over me. Probably my brain's way of protecting me, shutting off all emotion so I could function. I walked up to the stage, my voice flat and cold as I looked them both in the eye, and said, "You need to leave." Even I could hear how strange my voice sounded, like it belonged to someone else. And David, that smug piece of work, actually had the nerve to try smoothing things over. He started saying, "Mark, we need to talk," but I cut him off mid-sentence. "No, we don't. You both need to get the hell out of here before I break your nose." I pointed toward the exit, the same one her family had just used. Something in my expression must have told them I wasn't bluffing. They exchanged a look, then walked off the stage toward a nearby table to grab their things. They left. 50 people stood there in complete silence. No one said a word. Just stunned faces staring at me, waiting to see what I'd do next. My boss was there with his wife. Some of my oldest friends were in the crowd. People who had known us as a couple for our entire relationship. I felt like I owed them something. Some kind of closure to this absolute disaster of an evening. I walked back toward the stage, cleared my throat, and said, "I think it's safe to say the party's over. I'm sorry it ended like this." My voice cracked, but I pushed through it. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate your support." What else could I say? Surprise. My wife's been cheating on me with her boss, and I found out at the same time you did? Or maybe, don't worry, I'm only completely falling apart inside. There was no saving the moment. No words that could undo what had happened. People started collecting their things, whispering to one another, giving me those awful pitying looks as they headed toward the door. A few close friends came up, patted me awkwardly on the shoulder, or gave me quick, silent hugs, mumbling things like, "Call if you need anything," or "I'm so sorry, man." I nodded, thanked them, but it was all just noise. I couldn't actually absorb anything they were saying. It felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and far away. Within 30 minutes, the room was empty except for the venue staff, who were clearly uncomfortable and doing their best to stay out of my way while they cleaned up. I stayed to help with the initial cleanup, partly because it was part of our rental agreement, but mostly because I needed something to focus on, something normal to do, while my brain tried to process what had just happened. The venue manager kept shooting me these sympathetic looks, which somehow made everything worse. I paid the remaining balance, signed the paperwork she handed me, and finally left. When I got home and walked into our empty house, it all hit me again. 10 years of marriage gone. I sat on the edge of our bed, the one we'd shared for a decade, and completely broke down. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I pulled myself together enough to check my phone. There were a flood of texts from Sarah. Her messages were all over the place. She was shocked by her family's reaction. "I can't believe they would do this to me." She admitted the announcement was a mistake, but still didn't back down on leaving me. "I shouldn't have done it that way, but you have to understand, I need to move on." She suggested we talk. We should see a counselor. Sit down with someone who can help us through this transition. She even claimed it was a cry for help, without ever explaining what kind of help she needed or why her version of asking for help was to publicly humiliate me. Then she started blaming me. "If you had been more attentive, if you had taken my needs more seriously, it wouldn't have come to this." Her tone changed from message to message, like she was throwing everything out there to see what might stick. One minute, she was the victim of a heartless family. The next, she was the bigger person trying to extend an olive branch. Then she was the wronged woman, forced to take drastic steps by my failures as a husband. It was classic Sarah, always dodging responsibility, always trying to rewrite the story so she could come out looking better. But this time there was no spinning it. She crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I didn't answer her calls or respond to any of the messages. Instead, I contacted a divorce lawyer the next morning and scheduled an appointment to start the formal process of ending our marriage. I'm writing this to document what happened, not because I'm unsure if I'm doing the right thing. I know I am. I'm just trying to make sense of how everything fell apart so fast. Update, 1 week later. Thanks for all the comments on my first post. Some of you asked for more details about the party and Sarah's family's reaction. So here's some clarification. The party was held in a private event room we had rented for the evening. Sarah's parents and brothers had been there from the beginning, sitting at a reserved table near the stage. My family wasn't there because they live overseas. David, Sarah's boss, wasn't on the guest list. He showed up about an hour into the party, right after Sarah had stepped out briefly and returned with him. Based on their reactions, even her family was surprised to see him. As for what Sarah said exactly, I don't remember word for word, but it was something like, "Everyone, I have something to tell you. Tonight isn't just about celebrating 10 years of marriage. It's about a new beginning for me. I'm leaving Mark. I'm leaving him for David." She pointed right at him. "I found someone better. Someone who's man enough to give me what I want. A baby and a real family. This is happening. It's my decision, and I'm moving forward." I decided to file for divorce immediately based on that moment alone. She publicly ended our marriage, humiliated me in front of everyone we know, declared she was with another man, and said cruel, untrue things about me. The fact that her own family reacted so strongly and cut her off completely just proved how extreme and unacceptable her actions were. Her messages afterward? Pure damage control. No real explanation. No genuine remorse. Just more of the same manipulative tactics. The morning after the party, everything was already too far gone to fix. I met with a divorce lawyer, laid out everything that had happened, shared all the details about our marriage, finances, and assets, and told him to start drafting the divorce papers. He filed the petition for dissolution of marriage, which I signed, and then had a process server deliver it to Sarah at our house. She was still living there at the time. Once she got served, her messages started coming in more often and got a lot more aggressive. She kept demanding that I withdraw the petition, insisting I had no right to file for divorce. She claimed the party incident was just a mistake and accused me of blowing it way out of proportion. Her texts flipped back and forth between insults and threats, and she even had the nerve to say I was ruining her life, like she hadn't just blown up our marriage in the most public and humiliating way possible. I didn't reply to any of her messages. I just saved all of them, especially the threatening ones, and sent them to my lawyer. I asked him to inform Sarah's attorney. Yes, she got a lawyer pretty fast, that from that point forward, all communication had to go through her lawyers. I wasn't going to speak to her directly anymore. So that's where we were, divorce officially in progress, lawyers handling everything, and me just trying to piece my life back together. Update, 7 months later. It's been a while since I last gave an update, and a lot has happened. The divorce is finalized now, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again. After Sarah got the divorce papers and hired a lawyer, she filed her response to the petition. In her version, she conveniently left out the real reason we split, her humiliating, very public announcement, and even had the audacity to request alimony. Alimony, after dumping me for another man in front of everyone and saying I wasn't man enough to give her a child. Her spousal support request was based on the difference in our incomes and how long we were married, but it completely ignored why we were even getting divorced in the first place. It was like she was trying to rewrite the past and act like she was the one who'd been wronged. Around that same time, I started hearing from mutual friends that she was reaching out to them, spreading a totally different story, trying to make herself look like the victim. That was the final straw for me. She was asking for my money in court and trying to trash my name behind my back. When my lawyer showed me her alimony request, we discussed how our state's courts usually handle things like this. While judges focus mostly on how long a couple was married and income differences, they sometimes also consider how the separation happened. My lawyer sent a letter to Sarah's attorney explaining that if she pushed forward with the alimony request, we would present detailed evidence about why we separated. That included sworn statements from me and possibly witnesses who were at the anniversary party. We describe exactly what she said that night, how she announced she was leaving me for her boss, and how her family immediately disowned her afterward. We didn't threaten anything outside the legal process, just laid out what we'd bring to court if she kept pushing. It was all within legal boundaries. The effect was almost immediate. A few days later, her lawyer contacted mine to say Sarah was dropping her alimony request. They filed the paperwork not long after, officially removing it from the divorce proceedings. From what I've heard, things haven't been great for Sarah since that night. About 2 months after the party, she either quit or got fired from her job, the same place where David, her boss, worked. Apparently, she hasn't been able to land a comparable job since then. Her finances took a serious hit, and she ended up moving in with one of her cousins because she couldn't afford her own place. Her family has stayed firm in their stance and hasn't welcomed her back since that party, which left her with very little support. So here's how it all played out. Sarah ended our marriage publicly at our anniversary party. Her family cut her off immediately. I filed for divorce the next day. She demanded alimony. I warned we'd provide full evidence of her actions. She dropped the alimony request. She lost her job. She moved in with a relative because she couldn't afford her own place. The divorce is final now. We reached an agreement on dividing everything, and it was relatively straightforward. The court issued the official decree ending our marriage. Sarah doesn't work at her old job anymore, isn't receiving any money from me, and is living with her cousin. Her life now looks very different from what it was before all this. We don't speak anymore, and any necessary communication goes through our attorneys, which, to be honest, barely happens now. As far as I know, her family still hasn't spoken to her. I don't plan on giving any more updates. This chapter of my life is over, and I'm finally beginning to move forward. These past 7 months have been the hardest of my life. For anyone wondering about David, Sarah's true love from that party, apparently they didn't last. I heard they broke up not long after she left the company. I don't know the details, and honestly, I don't care. I wish I could say that everything has gone smoothly since then, but healing isn't linear. Some days I feel strong and confident, like I dodged a bullet and can finally focus on myself. Other days, I still feel the sting of betrayal. It hits me out of nowhere, like when I pass by a place we used to go together, or when I catch myself remembering moments that once felt genuine. But then I remind myself, those memories were real to me, even if they weren't to her. One of the hardest things to accept was that I'll never really get closure from Sarah. There won't be an apology or an honest conversation or anything that ties it all up neatly. She made her choices, and I made mine. I've learned that closure isn't something you get from another person. It's something you give yourself, and I'm working on that every single day. I've also started going to therapy. At first, I was hesitant. I thought I could just tough it out on my own, but the emotional weight of everything started wearing me down. Therapy has helped me process not just the divorce, but the self-doubt, the anxiety, the anger. My therapist has helped me understand that none of this was my fault, and that I'm allowed to feel what I feel without having to justify it. There's been growth in other areas of my life too. I've reconnected with old friends, people I'd lost touch with during the marriage. I didn't even realize how isolated I'd become until I started spending time with people who actually cared about me. People who asked how I was doing and listened without judgment. That kind of support has made a huge difference. Work has been a good distraction. I threw myself into my projects and started taking on new challenges. I'm not just doing it to stay busy. I'm building something for myself. Something solid. Something that no one can take away from me. I even started planning a short trip, a solo vacation. Just a few days somewhere peaceful where I can unplug and reset. I've never done that before, but I think it's time. As for dating again, not yet. I've had a few people suggest I try it. Even had one or two friends try to set me up, but honestly, I'm not there. I don't want to bring the baggage of this past relationship into something new. When I do decide to put myself out there again, I want it to come from a place of strength, not loneliness. I deserve that. Whoever I end up with deserves that too. And I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part of me that still wonders why. Why she did what she did. Why she thought humiliating me like that was the best way to go. But the truth is, I'll probably never fully understand it. And I've stopped trying. That was her choice, her mistake. Not mine to carry anymore. I also want to talk about forgiveness. Not for her, but for myself. I spent so much time asking myself what I could have done differently. If I missed the signs. If I wasn't good enough. That kind of thinking eats away at you. But now, I'm learning to let that go. I showed up in the marriage. I gave everything I had. That matters. I matter. And no amount of betrayal can take that away from me. Lately, I've been focusing on small joys. Cooking my own meals. Reading books I never had time for. Going for walks without checking my phone. It sounds simple, but after so much chaos, peace feels revolutionary. I used to think my life would follow a certain path. Marriage, kids, stability. That dream got shattered, but maybe that's okay. Maybe something better is waiting for me on the other side of this. I know some people in my situation would be angry forever. And believe me, I understand that urge. But I don't want bitterness to take root in my life. I want to feel free. I want to be light again. That's not something Sarah can give me or take away. It's something I'm building piece by piece, day by day. To anyone out there going through something similar, you're not alone. I know how dark it gets. I know how hopeless it can feel. But I promise there's life after this. Real, meaningful life. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. You just have to keep moving. Keep showing up for yourself. As for Sarah, I genuinely hope she figures herself out. Not because I want anything to do with her, but because I don't wish this kind of mess on anyone. Maybe losing everything will force her to look in the mirror. Maybe it won't. Either way, it's not my concern anymore. What matters now is that I survived. I came out of this stronger, wiser, and more aware of what I deserve. I don't need dramatic gestures or grand apologies. I need peace, honesty, and kindness, especially for myself. And finally, after months of pain and confusion, I'm starting to give myself that. So this is it. The end of a painful chapter, but not the end of my story. I'm moving on, not running away from the past, but walking towards something better, something healthier, something real. Thank you again to everyone who followed this journey, who reached out with kind words, who helped me feel seen when I felt invisible. You made more of a difference than you know. And with that, I'm closing this chapter for good.